Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started. First off, thank you all so much for spending your morning with us. I know many of you have demanding jobs, teams to lead, budgets to manage, and inboxes that probably get out of control just while you're grabbing a coffee. So we're so grateful that you're here, and make sure you grab an extra cup of coffee on your way out. It's from our friends at Barrio Coffee. My name is Allie Franklin. I'm the Director of Business Strategy here at Red Door. And what's great about my job is that I get a front row seat to conversations with marketing leaders like all of you across such a wide range of industries. But lately, I've really noticed a shift. The questions are becoming more layered, and the answers that we can provide are rarely simple. In the not so distant past, the questions that I used to get would be more straightforward. How do we generate more leads? How do we improve conversion rate? How do we optimize our media spend? Still important questions, right? But today the landscape has shifted, and the job of being a marketer has really shifted right along with it, right? So now let's talk about what I'm hearing now. Now I hear things like, I'm being asked to drive more growth without any more budget. Show of hands if that sounds familiar to anyone. Yeah, that's what I thought. How about this one? I have more data than ever, but somehow less confidence in what's actually driving results. My teams are all working hard and optimizing their individual channels, but I'm not sure the customer is experiencing one connected brand. And then, of course, our favorite, my CEO wants to know how AI is going to cut costs by next quarter. We love that one. But in all seriousness, the pressure isn't just coming from CEOs or tighter budgets or all of the new technology that we're trying to keep up with. It's coming from consumers too. Consumers are demanding more from brands. And that shift is bigger than AI or shrinking attention spans, which we know are about this big these days. That really becomes about expectations. Consumers are more skeptical, they're more selective, and they're less willing to give attention to marketing that doesn't feel useful or relevant to them. In fact, there was a global study done recently that found 81% of consumers now simply just ignore marketing that isn't relevant to them. In some ways, though, I think this is maybe a good thing. Consumers are forcing us to get smarter, to be more relevant, and stop thinking about things in isolated silos and campaigns. So the real opportunity in front of us is to build experiences that actually help people make better decisions. And it may seem small, but that kind of helps me sleep better at night. So if marketing is less influential than it used to be, maybe the real question isn't how do we get louder or how do we spend more money? Maybe it's how can we genuinely be more helpful? So I saw this shift in the consumer shopping experience firsthand recently with myself. When I needed a new tennis racket, I did what most consumers do, consulted my coach, asked my friends for advice, scrolled on social media, and visited some product sites, and eventually pulled the trigger. That's the traditional journey, right? Discovery, research, comparison, decision. But when I planned my first solo trip to Portugal this past June, the journey looked different. I spent most of my time on ChatGPT, build me a Portugal itinerary for Lisbon, Porto, and the beach that revolves around food, wine, and pottery. I made her work hard for me, and boy, did she. AI didn't replace the research. It helped me narrow the options by doing a lot of that work for me across blogs and social media. Which of these two hotels are best for a solo female travel, right? I did still validate my decisions by popping over to TikTok or some of their product sites, but it looked different, right? So that's what makes this moment so interesting. Many consumers aren't choosing one path or another. They're doing both. It's a choose your own adventure kind of moment. The thing is, I think a lot of marketers are assuming that people are only going the AI, ChatGPT, prompt route, but that's just not true. So the challenge in front of us now isn't choosing which journey matters more. It's learning how to influence both, or maybe all of them. Portugal worked out great, by the way. The tennis racket, my backhand still needs a little bit of work, so jury's still out. So that's why we're here today, not to spend an hour talking about AI or to add another buzzword to the pile. We're here because influencing consumers has become more complicated and more connected at the same time. So we're going to dig into that across 4 perspectives spanning technology, brand, integrated marketing, and measurement. We'll start with some invigorating conversations with my friends to my right that I'm about to introduce, and then we're going to walk through a real example in action. And you won't leave empty-handed. We built this great little diagnostic tool that scores your own customer journey against everything that we'll cover today. And I'll point you to that in the end. And then we'll leave some time for questions before we wrap. Just a few housekeeping items for our remote guests. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat or hold on to them until the end of the session. This session is being recorded, and we'll share the recording along with the session via email to anyone who registered for the event. Okay, let's get started. John Ferris is our president at Red Door, and John's the person that I go to when I need to zoom out. Look at that bigger picture, figure out what's really going to move the needle. He always has the pulse on the latest technology, specifically around AI. But what's really cool is that he's been really integrating these approaches into what we're doing at Red Door in a really easy to understand, beautiful way. Let's give it up for John. Okay, Emily Renfrey is my first call when I need help just connecting the dots across channels, across teams, across touch points. Emily is our VP of Integrated Marketing, and she oversees our paid media, social, and organic teams here at Red Door. So she's here to really represent this crazy cross-channel kind of journey that we're living in right now that we're trying to operate. Let's give it up for Emily. And last, if you are ever wondering why consumers aren't as excited about your marketing as you are, you can give Mallory a call. She's on our end. Mallory Collins is our Director of Brand Strategy and Creative here at Red Door, and I can always rely on Mal to really get to the core of what consumers want so that our creative is actually focusing on what they care about. Let's give it up for Mal. Okay, so let's get started. I mentioned that influencing consumers has really become more complicated than ever. So I want to open this up to all of you. Maybe we can start with you, John. At a high level, how do we as marketers effectively influence purchase decisions?
Yeah, so what's the old saying? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. So I would probably start before even jumping into the campaign with who's the audience we're trying to target, not just from a demographic perspective. That's great for targeting, but not very good for creative. So understanding what are their values, how do those values drive their attitudes, how do those attitudes drive their behaviors. So, you know, from a values and attitudes perspective, you know, are you looking for folks that value status and power, or are you looking for folks that value peace of mind? Are you looking for then behaviors like they're on the Discovery Channel watching nature shows, or they are on Instagram, you know, looking at golf tips, or are they spending time on Facebook groups talking to other outdoorsy people? Are they on Reddit lurking on threads and enjoying somebody else's poor golf game? And you might not be selling golf or camping equipment, but you're using that as ammo to know where are these people spending time, what do they care about. So that's a great place to start. And then you want to look at your particular category and the entry points that those people have coming into your category. Are they, you know, camping with buddies for a good time and some drinking around the campfire? Or are they taking their family on a, you know, lovely glamping trip? Two totally different category
Pick
entry
the
point.
second one.
Yeah, category entry points. And I fall into none of these categories, by the way. This is no firsthand. So then that's going to drive your positioning. So based on the category entry points that you really want to target, the audience that you're going after, how do those two things come together with your differentiated product, right? That's going to be your positioning that you really want to, blast that puppy out there across as many channels as you can. On the paid side, you need to coordinate that effort to make sure that the brand is making its way into all those messages. That's basically what we'll be talking about today. On the organic side, alluding to what you were talking about earlier, as a brand, how can you just be helpful to people throughout that process as opposed to trying to push them too much? And then I would be remiss if I wasn't speaking to the AI component based on your introduction. So both of those, the paid and organic elements, are really going to lead to AI's understanding of your brand, of your products or services. And so you need to be doing that in a very intentional way so that it is consistent, just like consistency and some level of distinctiveness or differentiation are going to drive mental availability in people's brains when they go to enter your category. The same holds true with AI, who's trying to approximate how humans think, right? So there's that, you're creating that base of AI memory that when somebody prompts, they're going to come back with that recommendation for your brand, ideally, if the right person with the right category entry point is doing that prompt. So that's where I would start.
That's great. Emily, do you want to?
Yeah,
I want the perspective from the channel side of
I'll
things.
build upon that, absolutely. Obviously, integrated marketing is where I geek out. So your paid media, your SEO, your organic social, your email, your content strategy, all of that is my purview. And I would certainly echo John's sentiment about deep consumer orientation. I think that's where any integrated marketing strategy needs to start. And I like to think about that influencing two key areas. So first, your channel mix, right? If you are still using the exact same channel mix that you had active a decade ago, you're probably missing the mark. Our consumers evolve, who your customer is evolves. It's really critical to understand who your consumer is today. And that requires deep research tools. I see a lot of brands that just assume who their customers are without doing that research to understand where they're spending their time, what excites them, what motivates them, what they value, which brings me to the second piece that is really critical for any integrated marketing strategy, and it's really your content and your messaging. And I'd say there are two components of that to consider. The first is, of course, what you're saying in general. Does it speak to those values and motivations like John was talking about? But the second is when you are introducing that. So if you are, say somebody has searched for your a non-branded query for a topic related to what your brand has to offer. If you are hitting them immediately with a paid search ad that is pushing an offer, last chance to buy now, that probably isn't the ideal timing for that. They are still in that early consideration phase. You should be instead introducing them to some deeper dives into your products, your offerings, maybe some comparisons between your products and a competitor so you can effectively move them through that journey. So those two pieces have to work together. What you're saying needs to speak to their values, their motivations, but then the timing also has to be considerate of where they are. And then the last element that I would throw in from an integrated marketing perspective, I see a lot of brands who put a ton of energy into building these fantastic performance marketing engines, which is wonderful and essential, but only a small portion of your customer set is actually in market to purchase at any given time. So to really be effective at influencing purchase, you need to think about that holistic picture, capturing the market demand today, but also building that future demand for 2 years from now.
Yeah, I think from a creative standpoint, building on Emily had some great points about what you say and going back to we want to make sure that we're prompting them, building that mental availability. So essentially what John said of like, we want your brand to pop in their head the moment that they're in the category to think about you. We want you to come to mind and for them to say, you're the good choice because I know that this brand stands for this thing. So how to do that, I think about from a creative standpoint, something you asked and said in your question, Allie, was influence. Like, how do we influence, not just get people to do something or like drag their feet along or like, okay, well, that was the only option, like truly influencing a consumer. What does that mean? I believe that means you need to earn trust by solving a problem, right? And your products and services should solve problems, but the way that you communicate that and the way that you tell that story and break that into digestible little components that make sense is really, really critical. So from a creative brand perspective, and my team will be like, yeah, we abide by these things. We measure creative off of these things. I think you have to do a couple of things. So first, you got to stand out. If you don't catch attention, you've already lost. So at every single touch point, what are you doing to get someone to stop, right? There's AI has just incredibly increased the amount of information out there, and it's harder and harder to gain attention. So what are you doing to gain that attention? Are you culturally relevant? Do you have unique colors? Do you have a unique way of gaining that attention through the way that you tell the story? Then do you resonate emotionally? Are you creating some sort of emotion in their mind? Is it frustration? Are you trying to get them to see a problem that they have and understand that and feel that pain a little bit in the moment? Are you trying to get them to laugh? There's a lot of heaviness in the world. Are you trying to create a little comic relief, like a Ted Lasso like feeling, something that feels good? So what are those emotions so that you can create that, association and get them in the door? And then you have to be consistent, right? We always talk about at Red Door, develop a system, not just a campaign. What are the components? So you need to think about what are your brand codes. I saw and I read this piece of information. I think it's so true. If you have a 30-second video, you need to show 7 brand codes. So color, logo, tagline. That's the amount of touch points that it really takes. So combine all of those things together. And I think when you talk about influence, you have to have that strong creative system that really speaks to each of those components and is really resonating with the consumer.
I love that. Mal, I want to make, can we make Ted Lasso a verb? Can we Ted Lasso that creative? Just to add a little bit of fun.
I'm sure my team will love that.
I'll put that in our next brief.
Amanda, Tom, Ted Lasso that.
Can we Ted Lasso this a bit? Well, this is a lot to think about. And as Emily, you mentioned, there's a lot of thoughts around, there's a lot of decisions to make around what channels you choose. And as we said, and I saw by a lot of hands, a lot of us have either the same budget to be able to accomplish this or maybe even less. So, John, where do brands, from your experience, where do they mostly over or under invest across this journey? And what does that cost them if they might choose in the wrong area?
Yeah. So on the overinvest side, I would say overinvesting in performance marketing. So if all you're doing is, to Emily's point, bidding on branded terms, retargeting people from that traffic, sending offers to people on Instagram with discounts at the bottom of the funnel, then you're fishing in a really small pond that is not going to get restocked. And so on the flip side of that, under investing in brand building activities. So the kind of heuristic is that you should be spending 60% of your budget on brand building, 40% on performance marketing. You can think about that at a channel level, but that's not really the right thing to do because, for instance, YouTube, our Google rep will tell us, is of course very good at building brand, but also can drive action at the bottom of the funnel. So you want to really think about this more at the creative level. So you should be
shocking. Yeah. Our reps claim to be achieving everything and anything.
YouTube and AI Max.
We promise. I'm the one that's driving.
And so 60-40 is just a rule of thumb, right? based off of the category you're in, how innovative your product is, how differentiated your brand is, how mature your brand is. That can be on a sliding scale. It rarely dips below 50% spend on the brand side. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're way out of whack on that and spending 80% on performance, then you're probably over investing there. In terms of under investing, I would say two things going back to that creative point. Under investing in creative, not just in that big brand, hero campaign, that's important. You want to start with a good foundation there, but really having enough. We all know now, like with these algorithmically driven platforms, creative is actually what is almost replacing targeting to a degree. Your Meta, TikTok are finding people based off of the reaction to your creative. You can't do that with like a few ads that you created off the back of a display campaign, like that you just tried to make an Instagram ad. It just doesn't work very well. You'll get some activity from that, but you'll get a lot better activity, and you'll start to get a lot better data on segmentation if you have a broad variety of creative that's targeting all of the different audience segments, all of the different category entry points that you feel strongest in against your competitors. And then you'll start to see which ones are resonating the best algorithmically, and that can give you really good hints as to where you should be pressing more. So that's one. Testing, also, you need multiple batches of creative just to be able to test. If you're not testing, then you're certainly not making the most of your media investment. And then the other one, kind of going a little bit different direction on the technology side, somehow like IT and marketing, who rarely agree on things, conspired to become like luxury car collectors, in that they have all these fancy platforms that cost a lot of money, and they're kind of being bought, admired, and sitting in the garage. Like they're not driving them, or they're driving the automatic when they could be using the speed stick or whatever. And so they're just marketers are leaving a lot on the table in terms of configuration of their platforms. Having IT help them, or a partner help them with setting up the configuration to be marketer friendly, to enable the marketer to be able to take action on their own. If every action that you need to take in a platform sits in a 3-week or 3-month IT queue, like you're kind of hosed. Like you're not going to make a lot of progress in terms of execution, and you're not going to be able to do the things you need to do in terms of keeping pace with the consumer and keeping pace with the demands of AI, in terms of fresh content, in terms of structured data, data feeds, and all of those things. So those are a couple areas where I think people are under investing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We were saying which channel are we over under investing, but creative is a whole other element to how much are you investing in creative to be able to hit all of these different aspects of the journey. Mallory, I'm going to bring this one to you. You've referred to brand as the anchor of the journey itself. So what does that mean in practice? I feel like a lot of marketers are just used to keeping creative pretty simple when executing across a number of channels, but how can brands really show up consistently when we're talking like 8 different platforms at this point, knowing that resources can also be tight typically?
Right. I think where I'll start with that is like, what do I mean by anchor? Like what is the role of an anchor? I grew up boating, camping a lot, so I'm very familiar with it. But essentially, we think about an anchor, it's something that holds position. It holds place, right? And when you drop anchor and resistance comes, say like a wave comes by, it burrows deeper in the ground. And so when we think about an anchor, it also creates relief. It creates ease. So you can kind of relax, put your feet up, swim, and do those sorts of things when your boat is anchored. And I think about brand, and I think we should, as marketers, in that same way, right? what is that role, and how do we create some of that efficiency, and then also that sort of consistency. And so knowing there's so many channels and so many different platforms that we need to create creative for and assets for, what is your source of truth, and what is that anchor that you have when there's resistance, when there's competitors entering the market, when there's confusion with consumers, and when there's new channels. I like to think of brand as that clear anchor. And going back to what John was talking about too, about just, again, salience, mental availability, how are you showing up? You just have a quick moment to show up and be associated in the minds of consumers. You need to have those brand codes and that consistency. And when I say like brand is the anchor, by brand, I mean your brand position, and then the system or the set of codes that you use to back that up and to articulate that. So again, your logo, your color palette, core imagery, things like your tagline. And when you're doing that, when you have that sort of consistency as a brand, you're also helping out the consumer, right? Going back to what I had said in the beginning is like, we really are here to build trust by solving problems. And a problem that consumers that I think we can all relate to have, right, is like the amount of decisions that you need to make on a day-to-day basis can feel really overwhelming and really heavy. So by having consistency, by using a brand as an anchor, you're making it easier for them to choose, right? They're entering the market. They already have a sense for who they're going to buy from. They know your value. They know what you stand for, and they've done that previous weeding. And so therefore they can preserve their mental space for the really tough decisions that you have to make, right? Like it shouldn't be so difficult to buy camping gear, buy a new pair of shoes, buy an appliance. Like there should already be that sort of preference, and some of that buildup that's happening. So the other component I think of that anchor, so that's the external consumer component, is the internal one, right? If you have a brand system, if you have something that is flexible and works for your different channels, that's going to create so much more efficiency, right? So every time you're going to develop creative because your media team or your social team really needs a new asset, you can go to that system and use it and scale it and adjust it with your channel expertise. You're not starting from scratch. You're not having to rebrief and recreate and reinvent the wheel. So I see brand as the anchor for those reasons of, externally, you're anchoring consumers on who you are, what you stand for. That's helping them make an easier decision. Internally, you're able to use your system that you have in place so that it's not a huge workload every single time you want to make new assets.
I love that, Mel. And I think that's what a lot of marketers struggle with is, okay, we've got some of these brand elements. Now maybe the digital team says, okay, I need assets for 10 different channels. What do we do with this one deck of beautiful brand work, right? So if we have this complex journey now with so many different touch points, Emily, maybe a question for you. How do we translate a single brand idea or message across everything from Meta to YouTube to the website without diluting it or, still keeping that consistency that Mal said was so important?
I'd say the simple answer is that the core campaign message doesn't change, right? Everything else around that can flex. So the platforms, the formats, the depth, the call to action, all of those allow for some flexibility. But that core campaign message should remain fixed, along with those other elements that Mallory was just talking about, right? Like your brand position, your brand codes, all of those should be consistent throughout, alongside that core campaign message. What I often see on the dilution front, it's rarely a result of teams just getting too creative with it. It's often them not having a system to work within, or maybe they have a system, but there's no governance of said system. So they're given an end goal to work towards, but no clear map of how to get there. So every team is given that task. Every team comes up with their own map, their own solution. So they're missing that initial governance and guidance to help them maintain that brand consistency and feel. So how do we course correct for that? There are a couple key elements that we at Red Door like to practice. So of course you need upfront strategic alignment. We have our post framework exercise that helps everyone orient around what we're trying to accomplish here at the end of the day. Is it sales? Is it leads? It's going to vary from business to business. That's table stakes. From there, you need integrated execution synchronization. That's where I see a lot of brands really struggling. Often they start with that initial strategic alignment, give those directives to teams and let them run with it. And that's helpful, but that's not true coordination between your paid media team, your SEO team, your organic social team. So we have a tool called the messaging map, our messaging map that helps us orient around that collectively across paid, organic, and all the teams that may be involved. So everybody in that initial planning phase is working together. It's when teams are sent off on their own that it's very easy for things to move in a different direction, and it can be challenging to course correct once that's already begun. So that upfront alignment is very, very critical. And then when it comes to consistency, I'd say governance is a key component there, and timelines. If folks are just working on completely different timelines and there's no unified governance, it can be very easy for things to get off the rails. So one thing that we like to do is evaluate creative collectively. So a little audit of what's in market across our paid, our organic, et cetera. So you can very quickly spot where things don't quite feel aligned with the brand. So a few different tools that can help facilitate that integrated, not just planning, but execution.
Okay, so everyone, our teams need to work together. We cannot have silos. I know silos was the buzzword about 10 years ago, right? Creative needs to talk to media needs to talk to organic, and it's just a symbiotic relationship, right? Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little to something I know I hear all the time from my clients. So show of hands, who has been struggling recently to effectively report on performance? I feel like reporting has become yes. Okay. So let's dig in here. I know obviously AI has just shaken up the whole world on how we can actually report up to the executive team on like, how are things actually going, right? We've had a lot of disruption this year. So John, let's have you take this one. Where do you feel like are the biggest blind spots when it comes to measurement these days? And maybe how can we work around them and be a little bit more successful?
Yeah. So I think we're still 10 years later after trying to hit people over the head with this. A lot of marketers are still stuck on last click attribution somehow in 2026. And I understand why. It's the easiest thing to measure, and you're looking at sales or leads or whatever the business objective is directly. However, it is wildly misleading in terms of, and we'll take a look at a sample customer journey later, but it's wildly misleading in terms of what's actually cumulatively driving that activity or sale. So number one, I would say just if you can't get to media mix modeling, incrementality, which I'll talk about in a minute, at least be measuring brand health. CPG brands are really great at doing this. Almost nobody else is even bothering to try very hard at measuring brand health. So it can be as simple as measuring how is your brand search volume growing, the impressions. Not like paid clicks on brand, but the actual impressions. How many people are searching your brand? That's a pretty good indication that there's demand out in the market. Is that growing or declining? Is it growing or declining relative to your competitors? That tells you where you're at from a marketing position standpoint. So that's an easy one. Classically, brand surveys. So you can use a Qualtrics or even a Survey Monkey or something like that to go out to market. It's relatively easy to get panel data unless you're in B2B. Sorry, B2B marketers, a little more expensive there. And you can use that obviously to just track, are more people or less people aware of us? Is the brand salient for those category entry points? So you can craft the survey around all that. You can also get really good insights beyond just tracking the brand health from that to influence your creative moving forward. So brand, I would say. And then you mentioned AI. That's a big blind spot right now. So we went from this like golden era of SEO and even digital marketing in general, where could track activity very early on, maybe early mid 2000s. We could actually even see in our analytics, what was our non-brand search? How many people are searching for the brand and getting to the website?
The good old days.
Yes. Then Google decided to obscure that. We're on this like rolling obscuring of data, right? And there's reasons for it. Some of which are economic on the side of these big platforms. Others are regulatory, and privacy oriented. But we went from that golden age of being able to quantify, hey, we've got all this demand coming through organic. Now there are just as many or more people searching in the category, searching for the brand, and not clicking through to the website. So it's something on the order of right now, 70% of queries on Google don't result in a click to any website. Some of that is people going back and saying, I didn't get a relevant result, I'm going to do another search. Some of that is people, is Google being selfish and people going to YouTube or to Google Images or to Google News, these various Google properties that are gobbling up some of that click stream.
We're just getting the answer right away.
Now, a lot of it is they're getting that answer in an AI overview. So when we talk about ChatGPT or Claude, yes, there are people off going through their buyer's journey in those platforms, but I would be focused a lot more on Google AI overviews and the impact of that, because Google has billions and billions of searches of daily active users. ChatGPT has something like right now 900 million. So they're just different orders of magnitude. And while Google hasn't gotten as much press around the Gemini model and all of that, they have the platform where all the users are. So from a measurement perspective, what does that look like? Unfortunately, it is imperfect, like a lot of marketing measurement. Going back to that Google AI overview thing, you can at least look in Google Search Console and be tracking the number of impressions that you're getting based off of your rankings. They don't yet have really clear delineation of, is that impressions of our blue link? Is that impressions of our rich snippet? Is that impressions of our Google AI overview? So I do believe that's coming at some point. So I would be paying closer and closer attention to Google Search Console these days. And then the highly imperfect science of prompt monitoring. So it's a good proxy to understand how you are showing up in ChatGPT, in Claude, LLMs in general, to be making up fake prompts based probably on your keywords that you're bidding on or high search volume keywords in your category, and making them a little bit longer, because we know people don't prompt like they used to search with like a 2 or 3 word query. Now it's like a 5, 8, 15 paragraph long prompt that people are entering. But it's a good proxy to know, like, how are we being represented in these platforms, and how frequently are we showing up versus our competitors in the category? The imperfect part of it is we're making up these prompts. Like, we don't have, like we have with Google, we don't have any inventory of how people are searching or prompting. And even if we did, they're almost all unique because of the length of them. So we're really just looking at a proxy there. It is important to do. It's the best that we've got, but it is creating a lot of headaches, I know, for marketers, because we're seeing traffic go down and we don't have a great metric to replace it. So I would say the best thing is hey, to communicate and to expectation set, we've moved from this golden era of clicks, and now guess what? Search and answer engines are now falling into the category that every other marketing channel has, which is it's an impression-based medium now. And we're trying to influence people via impressions. So that's the AI kind of blind spot. And then another big one, which isn't new, but it is growing and getting worse, is just this privacy challenges that we have as marketers. Nice as a consumer not to be stalked everywhere, but a few things there. Number one, just the cookie consent piece of it. So if you get one visitor from the EU or the UK, you need to be compliant with GDPR, especially if you're a large enterprise organization and you have a big target on your back in terms of regulatory or lawsuits. So being front and center with that GDPR opt-in sort of interstitial is putting a big black hole into your traffic, because of course, if it's front and center, a lot of people are going to opt into it. If you are only operating in the US and you can segment out your traffic, or you can segment out your traffic between EU and US, US is opt out. So I would be a lot less front and center. I would not place a big cookie consent banner if you're really, if you're reaching those US users, because you're going to get a bunch of them opting out unnecessarily. Aside from people opting out at that level, excuse me, you also have the iOS. So we've spent 10 years talking about it's the year of mobile. now it's not the year of mobile anymore. Everything is mobile. And a lot of that mobile traffic is coming through the iOS browser, and a lot of that traffic is now obscured because Apple's giving people the option to opt out. All of this is even before like Chrome and the whole cookie apocalypse thing that never happened. But if that conversation does come back around, we're going to have even less data. So how do you get around that? Again, imperfect, but the best that you can do, server-side tracking. So implementing server-side GTM, and we've been preaching this for a while as well, but be excellent at capturing first-party data, so that you can match back that first-party data to the anonymized data in Google and Meta, and do things like progressive profiling, like get people onto your email list, so that, and then start capturing more and more information about them along the way, instead of having a 10 field form to capture people's emails. So those are a couple of things that are big black holes as marketers, and a few ways to kind of mitigate that as best we can right now.
That's a lot. That's a lot to think about. I think my first thought on your second point was, oh boy, if they start to inventory my ChatGPT searches, whew, I don't know if I want that accessible.
You got to click on the little ghost, the temporary chat.
You're right.
For those things.
I don't want them seeing all my ice cream flavor brainstorms. Okay, so I feel like we've covered a lot of topics. We've delved deep. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a visual learner. So I think for the next probably 5 minutes, maybe we can do a little bit longer. We're running a little behind. I want to ask Emily and Mallory to take us through a real life example of really what this starts to look like. So why don't you walk us through, I know you both have alluded to it at Red Door, how we kind of work through this and help influence consumers across the journey.
Sure. Allie inspired Emily and I with her travels, and I was thinking about my favorite part of traveling, which is coming home and trying to recreate the recipes to the best of my abilities. So thinking about pizza, there's a new category, newish, that's emerged, which is at-home pizza makers. Does anyone have an uni or one of those? Ooh, jealous. So essentially, it's this market where traditionally we know you want to get a good slice of pizza. You have to either go to a pizza parlor or have one of those big, really nice pizza ovens installed, or you could like sadly microwave it, but that's just unappetizing.
Oh, man, no. No.
Air fry it. I've never done that. So there's essentially that market, and we thought it would be really fun to just talk about and unpack it a little bit. And the audience there that they have targeted and gone after is these millennials with some disposable income, really enjoy their outdoor space and having people over and entertaining. And so came up with this little invention of at-home pizza ovens. So first we want to look at what's the journey. So we talked a lot about that today of like, there's all of these different touch points. So what is the journey and what are the different steps? Let's take a look at that. So as John mentioned, we still have a tendency, I think, as marketers, we still see that last click attribution. So branded search gets the credit, and Emily and team do amazing paid media work, but we know that there's a lot that leads up to that, right? So look at all of those different touch points. First thing that I wanted to call out is I know traditionally there's different steps, right? We have awareness, consideration, conversion, advocacy, loyalty. That's a template. Make sure first you understand your consumer and you're clearly mapping the phases and stages. One of the things we love to do is just talk to loyal customers. They'll literally give this to you without knowing it, of like, tell me how you heard about us. Tell me how you started for the first time purchasing or buying from us. And they'll read out those touch points. So you can see, and this is just one example of potentially one journey. This could look different for every single person, but look at all the twists, turns, the touch points. You know, I'm thinking about potentially even coming back from travels. There's that initial like, oh, you know, maybe I should make food at home. Maybe pizza sounds good. A microwave doesn't sound like it's going to be a great option to recreate that. What are my different options? All the way through starting to explore what's out there. Should I buy a whole, you know, at home, one of those larger purchases for a pizza oven? Should I just go over to my friend's house? Should I go to a restaurant? And you can see all the way through all of those different things that are hitting, AI woven through all of the different channels. So what that means is that it just gets complex and it gets really messy and it gets hard to understand how do I have consistent messaging throughout, and then what are the right channels to support influencing the consumer.
Or maybe somebody just goes to ChatGPT and does a bunch of prompts and makes their way all the way through that journey without ever touching a channel that you're in or visiting your website. So this gets back to the measurement challenge that we were talking about. However, this doesn't mean that we don't, as marketers, need to be in all those channels. It's like tempting to say like, oh, should we be doing AEO or GEO? And wouldn't that solve for this? From a, if all you're doing is like adding structured data and maybe changing up your content strategy on your website a little bit, that's not going to do it, right? We do need to be in all of these channels on the organic side, right? So you can see a bunch of the channels that feed the results of AI, of an LLM. They're looking at Reddit. The LLMs are. They are looking at your website. They're looking at forums. All these different review sites. They're looking at all these different areas to answer. That's more on the organic side. So you might be tempted to say like, well, we just need to really focus on organic. Yes, for those like mid-funnel and bottom funnel type prompts that people are doing. But what you'd really like to have happen is that she skips the research of the category altogether and says, hey, I'm looking at pizza ovens and I've heard Uni is the best. Tell me more about which Uni product would be right for me. They've just skipped the line, right? To jump in front of the competitors. And then if you go to the next slide, I don't know if we're already on it. Yeah, so then also not forgetting about taking advantage of internal and external communities and holding that space for folks to be able to talk about their experience with your brand, because we know UGC is so important for consumers that are going through that, winding through that customer journey where they touch a bunch of channels. It's also really important for AI and how they're forming an opinion of you beyond what you have on your website. And if I was to just take a whack at it, I would say probably 80% of what LLMs are coming up with in terms of your brand is coming from external sources, especially in that like mid funnel where you're comparing a bunch of different brands. So you can't lose sight of that.
Okay, so how do we solve for all of that complexity? Please, 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 not by planning in silos. We have a tool that I was talking about earlier, our messaging map. I know this looks overwhelming, so I will walk you through it. When you look at this, there are two different ways to read it. One is vertically, top to bottom. So each of these columns represents one stage of a customer journey. So initial awareness, answer seeking, purchase, advocacy, and you can see every single potential exposure or touch point that a customer may have with your brand, with Uni at that singular stage in their journey. Then if you look horizontally across the rows, each row represents a different channel. Important to note that our channels are not siloed to individual journey stages, right? Each channel has a role at every single stage. What often happens with brands is you're evaluating your strategy, your performance horizontally. So looking at your YouTube performance, looking at your paid search performance, looking at your organic social, and rarely are you looking at it through both of these lenses simultaneously, nor are you planning that way, nor are you executing in that fashion. So John was talking about how our YouTube reps are very adamant about how YouTube can play a role across the journey. That's clearly represented here, right? So for Uni, at that awareness stage, maybe it's a 6-second bumper ad that's really just designed to get somebody salivating, wanting that pizza oven, enticed by what Uni has to offer. Then when you get to the consideration stage, maybe they're already sold on the idea of purchasing a pizza oven. They're nervous. What if they embarrass themselves? Making pizza's hard. So the content here is going to shift a little, kind of building that confidence in their purchasing decision. Then, of course, when you shift to the conversion stage, that is where you want to introduce incentives or some compelling reason for them to take action right now. Maybe they get a free peel alongside their pizza oven purchase. And then, of course, flowing into the advocacy stage, there are other Uni products. It's easy to lure someone into that system. So maybe it's about how to enhance your pizza making, dough hydration, introducing them to some of the other tools that you have to offer. Speaking as a new pizza oven owner myself here.
Maybe like a great chef's hat to wear.
I
would add that to
I've
cart.
come a long way since we first purchased. It's been a steep learning curve, but we're there now. So this orientation, this tool helps us really plan for all of that. I love a few components of it. I love that paid and organic are mapped out simultaneously. You typically do not see that in planning. It is typically the paid team planning independently, the organic team planning independently, but there are so many dependencies. So thinking about in that consideration stage, maybe your paid search team is bidding on Uni versus Ghazni. Then your SEO team has developed content that is comparing pizza ovens. Maybe there is a Reddit thread that has content that's more comparative in nature too. It's important, one, that the brand is showing up in a way that feels unified across all those touch points. And if you're not planning together, then you can certainly miss the mark. Two, it's also important to be aware of the push and pull those may have. So maybe you're seeing a decline in performance on the paid side, but organic is capturing that traffic. So that's really actually a healthy loss and not something that should be a red flag that you'd be trying to course correct for. But if you're not thinking about it in this way, then it's very easy to miss that and to make course corrections that are actually detrimental to your brand. You will also see we have website and answer engine optimization represented in here. That is, of course, a newer addition to what we have to plan for in this complex ecosystem that is marketing. So having that top of mind and understanding how the various components play into our visibility there is really helpful. And then it's also just a really easy way to spot any gaps, right? What is missing in the journey? Say your CFO says we need to cut this line item. It's a lot easier to have a conversation about its impacts when it's visualized in this way versus just saying, okay, we're going to get rid of meta here. So a lot of benefits to this type of planning, and my team takes it and uses it as really our roadmap for that synchronized execution. It's much more than just that upfront planning like we initially talked about. But there are some other brand components too that make it effective.
Absolutely. And I think a really fun part is we talked about please don't operate in silos. This is a really great tool, a fun tool to be able to collaborate between brand creative and all of the cross-channel activation components. You'll see how that everyone deserves great pizza, which would be the core campaign idea. There's a commitment to that and it's infused throughout. And what I talked about in the beginning is that's really that system that's used. At the bottom, you'll see kind of we have brand codes. So those are repeatedly used as well, but customized per channel. So again, not starting from scratch, optimizing, and a really great point and touch point for your teams to brainstorm between brand creative and activation teams, and just a good gut check of is everything laddering back up and do we have the discipline to that core campaign idea?
How cool is this? I know we just started rolling this out and I feel like this just brings everything together. So thank you guys for walking through it. We are just on time. We're a little behind, but we are right on time to start some questions from the audience. So I want to open it up if anyone has any questions for the panel, and if anyone remote wants to put any questions either in the chat or raise your hand and we can call on you.
So I'm a product marketer for a B2B SaaS company, and our brand team and our product marketing team work pretty closely together. So how do you distinguish between the handoff of the brand when you get closer to the bottom of the funnel or the middle of the funnel, you're talking a little bit more about product, and if there's a high involvement sale, translating that into a sales conversation? Or like, what is your philosophy on that, I guess?
I think our philosophy would be going back to, it's a great question, especially like how does this flex for different types of businesses, especially ones that are more one-on-one relationship when you get towards the end, is like mapping that journey like we talked about of like there is a template, right, for different funnel stages, that awareness, consideration, conversion, all of that, taking the time, sitting down with your customers and having them talk about their experience with you so that you can map those stages accurately, and understanding to, you know, what then are the like motivations, decision points that are happening at each of those, and saying this is the information to give them. Because I know when it comes to B2B, especially more specific topic, you just need to get down to the nitty gritty and show them, you know, answer their questions, have those one-on-one conversations. So less about, yeah, let's tell a major story and more about let's understand what are the questions we need to answer and what are those like points that we need to overcome.
I think it's a really good use case for that brand audit tool, particularly for the brand to be looking at how the product marketing and the salespeople are talking, and are they infusing the right brand tone, voice, and speaking to the overarching kind of brand value proposition in the ways that the brand team would hope. And I'm sure that's a negotiation to some degree, but at least, you know, knowing is better than not.
Good question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brogan. I work at NST, which is a PR agency, and we have a wide variety of clients. So the accounts I work on are California Walnuts and then also WD-40. And my question is a little more tactical rather than strategy, and I think maybe more for integrated is I feel like everybody on a survey would say they use YouTube. They have YouTube, they're watching YouTube. How do we understand how people are using YouTube? And I think that relates to Walnuts and for WD-40, maybe they're going there for how-to projects, figuring how to do a task on their own. But I think for Walnuts, we don't know. Are they watching their favorite lifestyle vlogger? Are they going there for recipe content? So curious about, I think for everybody and all the accounts that you guys work on, how people are using YouTube and maybe ways that we could explore that channel better.
Yeah, that's an interesting question and a challenging one to answer, right? But there are some tools that you could use in platforms that could be insightful. Within Google, you have the ability to dig into the audiences that you're reaching and surface other attributes that you can then use to inform your targeting approach. So that applies to search, to YouTube, to many different tactics there, but you can identify some key themes, interests, affinities that can be directional for YouTube. That may give you an indication of the type of content that you're consuming. You can also get a sense of the content that you are running on if you're targeting an audience and not a content type. So some of that targeting approach, maybe rather than only wanting to run on recipe related or cooking channels in the instance of Walnuts, you're really targeting that persona, and where your ad placement ultimately serves may deviate from that contextually relevant environment, but you're reaching the user on the type of content that they're consuming. So really just digging into the platform analytics will give you a better sense of some of that YouTube behavior. There are also other research tools, like we use Resonate, that certainly surfaces quite a few behavioral elements that may not be as specific to the type of content that they're watching on YouTube, but it can give you broader indications that apply across other channels too. So use those internal tools in platform resources, but also tap into some external tools as well. And it's always challenging, like self-reported. How did I hear about you? What are the platforms you see? Folks will say, oh, I saw your billboard. And you're like, I'm not running billboards. So obviously that wasn't how. So it's going to be imperfect, as many things are in marketing, but can certainly be insightful.
Thanks, Emily. I want to make sure I can get you all back to work on time and not be too over. So I know. If anyone has any other questions after, though, the gang will be hanging out. So feel free to come and ask them one-on-one. But before we wrap, just two quick things. There will be a recap email going out to everyone who did register today. It'll include the recordings. You can revisit anything that we talked about today. And then, like I mentioned, we built a little something just to help you guys coming out of this. So it's just a short diagnostic. It'll take about 5 minutes, and it helps you score your own customer journey across those 4 different areas that we discussed today. We're going to put, there it is, the QR code is up on the screen if you want to get started on that. And then it'll also be in the email if you guys want to circulate it. The way we see it is like, maybe have your whole team fill it out, and it might be interesting just to see how you all answer that. And that's our morning. I want to wrap. I want to thank John, Mal, and Emily, and thank all of you all for being here today. We'll be around for the next 30 minutes. Grab another coffee, grab a breakfast burrito. Let us know how you thought. We always love feedback, and have a wonderful day. Thank you all.